You've just found the signal in the static. Listen closely. The story is already beginning. The reason I was trawling through eBay for vintage computer gear was simple: nostalgia. I collect old tech, think floppy disks, chunky monitors, the kind of peripherals that could double as doorstops. I was looking for a specific model of a 1990 seconds external hard drive, but I got distracted. That's how I found the flash drive. It was listed by a seller with the name Time Worn, and the description was ridiculously short: USB drive. Used. The photo showed a cheap, generic metallic thumb drive, the kind companies hand out at conferences. It looked old, maybe 10 or 15 years old, but unremarkable. What caught my eye was the price: 99 cents, plus $3 shipping. I figured, why not? 99 cents is basically free. I hit buy it now and forgot about it instantly. 3 days later, it arrived in a small, padded envelope. It felt cold in my hand, heavier than it looked. It had a small scratch near the keyring loop. I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting it to be dead or filled with ancient spreadsheets. The drive mounted immediately, showing up as no label. It had only one folder inside. The folder was named The Next Year. My first reaction was a nervous laugh. Maybe it was a prank, a silly text file, a collection of bad photos. I double-clicked the folder. Inside were 12 files. They were not documents. They were videos, named simply Month 1, M4 through Month 12. Each file was exactly 30 minutes long. The total file size was massive, suggesting high-quality video. I clicked on Month 1 and Prue. The video started instantly. It was shaky, handheld footage, but the quality was sharp. The sound was just ambient noise, mostly the quiet hum of a room. The perspective was tight, focused on a wall in what looked like an ordinary living room. There was a cheap piece of abstract art hanging there. I studied the art. It was a print I recognized, one I had seen online but had never actually bought. Then, the camera panned slightly, showing a familiar brown leather armchair, a stack of books on a side table, and a specific mug resting on top of the books, a mug I had seen in a thrift store last week and decided not to purchase. A cold, heavy knot formed in my stomach. The room wasn't familiar yet, but it was on its way. It was a version of my living room, one I hadn't finished decorating yet, but one that contained objects I had considered buying, or maybe would buy. The video continued, silently observing the empty room for a few minutes. Then, the front door opened, and I walked in. I walked in. It was me, wearing a familiar blue hoodie and carrying a bag of groceries. I looked tired. I dropped the bags on the counter and then went straight to the armchair, collapsing into it with a sigh. The man on the screen was me, but he was 1 month older, living in a slightly different, slightly tidier version of my future apartment. I watched, transfixed, as my future self went about the next 30 minutes of my life 1 month from now. I watched myself make a boring dinner, check my email on my phone, and absent-mindedly stare at the TV. It was mundane, but deeply, profoundly terrifying. The camera was hidden perfectly, observing from a fixed high corner. The video ended. I ejected the flash drive and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a hollow metallic thud. I sat breathing heavily, running scenarios in my head. A hidden camera prank, a sophisticated stalker, but how did they predict the things I would buy? I had to prove it wrong. I immediately went to the thrift store and bought the ridiculous floral mug I had seen, just so the video would be incorrect. I ordered the abstract art print online from a different vendor than I had planned. I was trying to change the future. When month 1 rolled around, I was a wreck. I stayed home from work, sitting on my current messy sofa, clutching the mug I had forced myself to buy. When the time matched the video 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was the delivery guy with the abstract art. I signed for it, hung it up, and looked at the clock. At 4:45 p.m., I went to the kitchen and dropped my bags of groceries identical to the ones in the video on the counter. Even though I had planned a completely different dinner, the contents of the bag were exactly right. I walked to the armchair and collapsed, sighing the same sigh. I was living the video, minute by excruciating minute. The mug and the art were exactly where they were supposed to be, despite my desperate attempts to alter the variables. I had failed. The flash drive was a record, not a suggestion. The psychological horror of knowing the immediate future was crushing. I couldn't stop myself from watching Month 2 WM4. I watched it immediately. The second video was darker. It started with a tense argument. My future self was shouting at my roommate who had moved out 6 months ago. The sound was muffled, but the anger was clear. The argument ended with my roommate slamming the door and never coming back. I realized the flash drive was showing me the precise, devastating fight that would end a lifelong friendship. Over the course of the next few months, I was trapped. I tried everything to change the script. I prepared a dozen polite notes for my roommate. I planned to avoid the topic of the fight entirely. But the night arrived, the specific sequence of words happened, fueled by stress and lack of sleep, and the door slammed exactly as the video had shown. I was living in a straitjacket made of time. I started watching all the videos at once. Month 3 showed me losing my job, a boring scene of me on a video call, receiving the news. Month 4 showed me breaking my arm in a stupid fall while trying to fix a gutter. The flash drive wasn't showing me a series of possibilities, it was showing me a fated trajectory. It was showing me that my choices didn't matter, that the outcome was fixed. The knowledge paralyzed me. I stopped applying for jobs knowing I would lose them anyway. I stopped talking to friends knowing they would eventually leave. The flash drive wasn't a warning, it was a curse that induced lethargy and despair. By month 6, the videos became truly terrifying. My future self was visibly withdrawn, the apartment was messy, and the footage showed me constantly drinking. The argument that was supposed to happen with my mother was the worst. I watched myself say cruel, unforgivable things that would permanently damage our relationship. I wept while watching it, knowing the words that would soon leave my own mouth. I called my mother right after watching the video. I told her I loved her. I tried to preempt the fight, but the stress of knowing the future made me irritable and aggressive. When the phone call finally happened, the exact same tension, the exact same exhaustion led me to say the exact same cruel phrases, only slightly rearranged. The devastating result was identical. I tried to destroy the flash drive. I smashed it with a hammer. The drive, housed in cheap metal, didn't even bend. I threw it in a campfire. The plastic housing melted, but the chip remained, glowing faintly blue in the ashes. I threw it into a river. 2 days later, it was waiting on my doorstep, clean and dry, looking exactly as it did when it first arrived, small scratch near the keyring loop included. The flash drive was the opposite of free will. It was digital determinism. I became obsessed with the videos for the second half of the year. Month 7 was just me staring at a wall for 30 minutes drinking. Month 8 showed a hospital room. That was when the fear returned, sharper than ever. I watched month 9. The camera was still in the hospital room. I was lying in the bed, unconscious, tubes everywhere. The doctor came in and spoke to a nurse, and though the audio was muffled, I could make out the words, "He might not make it." The cause wasn't visible, just a devastating accident or illness. This was the part I could not live through. I had to change it. I did the only thing I could think of. I changed my environment completely, radically. I packed one bag and left the city. I drove 3,000 miles to a small town where I knew no one. I got a low-paying job at a coffee shop. I sold my car. I got a tiny, sparse apartment. I stopped using my phone and laptop, opting for payphones and libraries. I was a ghost. I was banking on the idea that the videos were rendered based on my environment and routine. By destroying the routine, I might destroy the script. Month 9 arrived while I was in the tiny town. I locked myself in my small new room. I was tense, waiting for a car crash, an accident, a sudden illness, but nothing happened. The entire day was boring. I worked my shift, made coffee, and went home. The fixed future hadn't followed me. I had broken the chain. Tears of relief streamed down my face. I was free. I ran to the nearest post office and bought a huge shipping box. I put the flash drive inside, sealed it with half a roll of duct tape, and mailed it to a remote, unpopulated island in the South Pacific. I used a fake name and paid cash. I felt safe for the first time in months. I got a new laptop, a new phone, and started my life over. The sense of victory lasted exactly 1 week. I was setting up my new laptop. I plugged in a generic USB hub. When the hub connected, a new drive icon appeared on my desktop. It was labeled, "No label." I froze. I hadn't plugged in anything but the hub. I double-clicked the icon. Inside was the folder, the next year. And inside that folder were 12 brand new video files, named Month 12. The horror was not that the flash drive had followed me. The horror was that it knew my new location. It knew I had a hub. It knew my new life, my new routine, before I had even started it. I clicked on the first new video. It showed the tiny coffee shop where I now worked. It showed me standing behind the counter making a latte. The footage was clearer, less shaky than before, and the camera angle was different. It wasn't fixed. It was moving, slightly, subtly, as if carried by someone walking by. The video showed my new future, every detail correct, only this time the perspective was not static. It was active. I realized the flash drive wasn't a recording of the past, it was a rendering of the inevitable. And its methods were adapting to my attempts to escape. I didn't watch the rest of the videos. I couldn't. I unplugged the hub and threw it out. I now live a life dedicated to chaos. I change my schedule daily. I never buy what I plan to buy. I never walk the same route twice. I don't form attachments. I have become a creature of random motion, hoping to outrun the algorithms of my own destiny. But every few weeks, I wake up, and there is a tiny cheap thumb drive on my bedside table, or next to my coffee mug, or slipped under my pillow. It has a tiny scratch near the keyring loop. It has the folder, the next year. And inside there are 12 brand new, crystal clear videos, all perfectly documenting the year to come. I refuse to watch them. I burn them, bury them, or mail them to random addresses, but I know they are just placeholders. The drive knows what I will do. It knows how I will try to destroy it. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking home, taking a completely random route through the darkest streets, I look down at my phone. The screen is blank, but it seems to reflect the light differently. And for a split second, I think I see a tiny, metallic silver shape reflected on the glass, moving silently behind me. It's not a stalker. It's not a ghost. It's the next camera, and it's already filming. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.